Because of the death of the woman I once pursued. Silas held a grudge against me for an entire lifetime. So, we are given a second chance. After the woman reappeared at the wedding, Silas hurriedly cast me aside and left with her. Before leaving, he left me with just one sentence. Serafina, wait for me for a year. I'll come back and marry you. I did not refuse, and turned to marry someone else. Little did Silas know, this so-called new life was nothing but a transaction. Just before his death, Silas tightly gripped my hand. Serafina, if there's an afterlife, I will save her. Luna, floating in midair, could hardly wait. System, exchange all my points. I want to pursue Silas again. Exchange successful. Host, this is your last chance. A flash of white light passed by. I found myself draped in a red veil, holding a red ribbon, just like in my past life. At the wedding between Silas and me, Luna barged in, holding Silas's personal jade pendant, stumbling as she entered. Silas. The other end of the red ribbon fell to the ground, and Silas, in a hurry, spoke. Serafina, wait for me for a year. I'll come back and marry you. Before I could reply, the person beside me had already vanished. Serafina, wait for me. I lifted the veil, only to see the hem of Silas's clothing. So, you've returned. In this new life. You feared I would stop you. Certain I would wait for you. Unconcerned with how embarrassed I'd be. Leaving without a care. But that's fine. It saved me a lot of trouble. All the guests in the hall looked at me with sympathy, and my elder brother could no longer contain his anger, wanting to chase after them. But I stopped my furious brother. Brother, the ceremony isn't completed, and this marriage doesn't count. Let's return to the manor. Silas's mother, seeing I was serious, ran off, one shoe lost in her haste. Silas will come back. He's just confused for now. I stepped out of the door, my pace steady, not looking back. This broken Silas family. I didn't want to stay in it any longer. A man as indecisive as Silas. I had no desire for him anymore. Silas and Luna fled the capital that very day. Silas's mother, unable to find her son, saw that I had truly settled all accounts, and in desperation, brought pastries she had personally made to my doorstep. Serafina, dear, I know you are the most understanding. Silas is just as soft-hearted and believed that woman's lies. You are the most sensible. I know. Her face was forced into a stiff smile, but her eyes kept darting away. At this point, she still looked down on me. Perhaps it was because I had always been too concerned with saving face before. I pulled my hand back and spoke coldly. Silas's mother. I'm already engaged. You've overstepped. Her body slumped, staring at me in shock, but only for a moment. She quickly regained her composure, her face once again plastered with a flattering smile. Serafina, don't speak such nonsense. I know you're angry. But what can't be resolved between husband and wife? I promise. Just one day. Silas will return. Tomorrow is a good day. Come with me and complete the wedding. Silas is kind-hearted. I'll take care of that woman. Don't be angry. She trembled slightly, looking at me with pleading eyes. Perhaps she understood that without me marrying into the Silas family, Silas could never secure the title. She was trying to coax me into the house, believing that once I was inside, no matter how long Silas was gone, I would obediently wait for him. After all, in our country, women who were abandoned or divorced would bring shame to their family. In my previous life, I couldn't bear to let my father and brother suffer and wasted my whole life. But now, after being given the chance to live again, how could I willingly jump back into that fire pit? So, I decisively turned away and left. Serafina. Silas's mother screamed behind me. But I quickened my pace. That evening, my father sent a letter to the Zane family in Gyeonggan. The Zane family had only one son, and there was an ancient family tradition, no concubines for men, and no women for concubines. Zane's mother had no daughters, and my father and Zane's father had been through hardships together. The family traditions were clean, and their wealth was stable. Except for Zane being somewhat carefree. This match was perfect. Before, I had been blinded by so-called love and promises. But once I woke up, I knew exactly what choice to make. However, the time of this rebirth had been so awkward, and it almost couldn't be reversed. Fortunately, the Zane family bore no grudges. Not only did they rush to send a marriage letter, but they also sent a lot of gold and jewels. They called it an addition to my bridal trousseau, compared to Silas's family, who only sent me pastries to placate me. The Zane family was truly sincere. Father was very pleased and hastily arranged the match. Within 3 days, my marriage to Zane was formally arranged. To avoid further complications, Father and Zane's father agreed on the date. The wedding was set for a month later. Time was tight, and I had to leave in 3 days. During this turbulent period, my family kept the matter quiet. But Silas's mother, seeing that I was unyielding, heard something and mistakenly thought I was deceiving her. To salvage her reputation, she began to push me to enter the Silas family as soon as possible. She came to my house every day, crying, trying to shift the blame for Silas's runaway marriage onto me. It was once because I loved Silas that I gave respect and care to his mother. But now, facing a malicious old woman who wanted to ruin me, I certainly didn't intend to let her off easily. So, I had my father present Silas's father with a formal petition at court. Silas's father, ashamed, locked his wife in confinement and stripped her of her managerial rights. I thought Silas's mother would finally quiet down. But somehow, she managed to bribe someone by my side and had Silas's handwritten letter delivered to me. The handwriting was sloppy. Silas had hastily written it that day. Serafina, do not chase after me. Do not seek me out. You must listen to my mother. Do not let her suffer. I promise. When I return a year later, I will give you a grand wedding. Wait for me. My brother gritted his teeth as he read the letter aloud, crumpling it into a ball and throwing it at Pingo's face. Pingo trembled as she knelt on the ground. You treacherous servant. Someone, tie her up and throw her, along with her deed of servitude, to the Silas family's door. Pingo looked at me with desperate eyes, trying to plead for mercy. Miss. Pingo's mouth was sealed shut. I coldly watched as she was dragged away. In my past life, in order to become a concubine, Pingo had done many things that betrayed me. I always thought she had changed, but it turned out that she had always been weak to temptation. I hadn't planned to bring her with me to the Zane family this time, but I didn't expect Silas's mother to personally push her out. How could she think that just one letter would make me change my mind? When I handed the letter to my brother, Pingo was utterly stunned. She still thought I was deeply in love with Silas. Didn't she? Before I left, I had to make sure everyone understood my stance. The next day, my brother presented the letter to the court and spoke about Silas's reckless actions. The emperor had been hesitant to award the title to Silas's half-brother due to Silas's father's bias and my engagement to Silas. But now, the situation had changed. Silas had publicly trampled on our family's face, and we had no intention of letting him off. His Majesty happened to find an excuse to punish Silas's father and, taking advantage of the opportunity, passed the title directly to Silas. After publicly berating the man for failing to raise his son properly, the emperor issued a decree stripping Silas of his position as heir and forbidding him from ever inheriting the title, only to bestow a brand new peerage upon Silas himself. Silas's father had only 2 sons, one now barred from succession, the other newly ennobled and equal in rank to him. Enraged, Silas's father sent Silas's mother away that very night, banishing her to a country estate under the pretext of self-cultivation and seclusion, and soon after announced his intention to take a concubine as a formal wife. That night, Silas's mother's cries echoed down the street. Silas's future was as good as gone. When he returned a year later and learned what had happened, perhaps he would be grateful to me. After all, he once said that fame and fortune meant nothing compared to Luna's life. The next morning, I boarded the bridal boat bound for Gyeonggan. As my family's figures faded into the mist, I leaned against the railing, reluctant to look away. When the boat finally turned downstream, I could no longer hold back my tears. My longing drifted away with the current. The wind rose. My reluctance scattered with it. Wiping away my tears, I lifted my gaze toward the open. Endless blue ahead. It was time to seek a new beginning. For half a month, the journey was calm until one evening, when the boat suddenly jolted as if it had struck something. The impact came without warning. A violent shudder that unsettled my heart. Startled, I pricked my finger. A bead of blood welling up. Just then, Perla arrived with the boatman. "Miss." A small boat collided with us and overturned. The couple aboard are drenched and begged to stay the night. Seeing that night had fallen, I agreed. The couple insisted on thanking me personally, and I could not refuse. So I met them through the curtain. "So this is an ancient wedding boat. It's so exquisite. Silas. Thank you for coming with me." The woman's excited voice reached my ears and I froze. Silas and Luna. Of course. What bitter irony. Had Pingo not betrayed me, the person at my side would never have been replaced. No wonder they failed to recognize this was my bridal vessel. I lost all interest and gestured for Perla to send them away. But Luna refused. Ignoring the warnings, she lifted the curtain and froze when our eyes met. You followed us? You promised." She glanced at Silas, then hastily dropped the curtain. Too late. Silas had already seen me. "Serafina?" Stunned, he lifted the curtain wide. "Why are you here? What's this wedding bout about? Where are you going?" He strode forward, seizing my wrist. Luna, panicked, pushed him aside and fell to her knees. "Serafina, please. Spare me. Silas only married me to save my life. A year from now, I'll return him to you. I left you a letter. Why did you come? Can't you leave? Can't you just let me live?" She covered half her face, hiding the hatred in her eyes, and wept as if her heart would break. Silas looked stricken. He pulled Luna up and held her close. Seeing me stand silent, his eyes filled with disappointment. "Serafina, this is about a human life. Just 1 year and you couldn't even wait half a month. How did you become like this?" I tried to speak. "You misunder." Silas cut me off. "What? That this is all a misunderstanding? That you didn't come chasing after me on purpose? Serafina, I know you better than you know yourself. If I hadn't left when I did, you would have stopped me, and do you know what would have happened to Luna? She would have been punished. Broken. Dead. Do you want us to bear that guilt for life? It's only a year." Furious, he gathered Luna in his arms and turned to leave. "I wasn't chasing you. Silas. I'm getting married. Can't you tell this is a bridal bout?" Silas froze mid-step. He turned slowly, his face darkening. "I'm truly disappointed in you. Serafina, can't you live a day without me? Must you resort to such lies?" When I said nothing, Silas sighed, impatience flashing in his eyes. "Don't make a scene. Go back after tonight. It's only a year. I'll return and marry you." My hands trembled as I set my teacup down hard. Fine. There was no point in arguing with a man who would never believe me. Silas looked startled. Uncertain. You're not refusing?" He took a step toward me, but Luna tugged his sleeve. "Silas. I don't feel well." He closed his eyes, as though making a grave decision. "Serafina, let us stay the night. Tomorrow, after you see us off, go home. Stop doing things like this." I gave a small, cold smile. "No need to wait for morning. You can leave now." Silas only sighed again. "Why be so stubborn? I'll be your husband soon enough. It's just a year. Don't make things hard for Luna. She saved my life. They say one should repay such a debt with devotion, but I've stayed faithful to you instead, hurting her in the process. We are one body, one fate. Try to understand. Luna only wants to live." I choked on a laugh. Was Silas always this shameless? Wanting everything, excusing it all, suppressing the turmoil in my chest, I said quietly, "Then marry Luna. No one's stopping you." His eyes lit up. He stepped forward, then hesitated. "Serafina, do you truly mean that? Or are you still angry?" How ridiculous. Silas had been waiting for me to yield. If not for my family's power, he would have married Luna long ago. I exhaled slowly, meeting his gaze with unwavering calm. "Marriage should follow the heart. Do as you wish." Silas smiled faintly and started toward me. I stepped back. And he looked mildly disappointed. As you say. Then. Have your servants prepare food and clothes for us. After tomorrow. Return to the capital and wait for me. Luna's tears fell again. Silas. Are you leaving me once more? He comforted her as they walked away. Don't worry. I'll keep my promise. But Silas. What about Serafina? He laughed softly. She'll endure a few rumors. That's all. Rumors that could destroy a woman. And Silas knew it. He simply didn't care. Had I not been ruthless, had my family not protected me, my life would have already been over. My heart was completely frozen. This was the person I had once given my heart to. I called for Perla. Perla seemed a little upset. Madam. Are you really going to side with that rude couple? I gave a faint smile. No. Take them and throw them off the boat. Immediately. Silas and Luna were drenched. Their dry clothes were soaked again. I ordered the boatman to leave them behind. Silas was furious. He held Luna tightly. Shivering. His mouth moved. And he was saying something from a distance. Probably not anything pleasant. I had no interest in it. I simply glanced at them coldly before slamming the window shut. A breath of relief escaped me. And I felt much more at ease. These wretched people. I would never have to see them again in this life. Silas. Still stranded on the small boat. Could not understand what had just happened. Serafina had once been so deeply in love with him. There was no way she would do this. Even in anger. She had always been the one who cared for him the most. No matter how upset she was. She would never treat him this way. Perhaps the cold water had frozen his mind. He let out all his dissatisfaction from both past and present. But Serafina's boat was already drifting further away. With no sign of returning. A sense of panic began to rise in his chest. But Luna reassured him. Silas. It's my fault. I shouldn't have left a letter for Serafina. She wouldn't have come all this way if I hadn't. Silas. Don't leave me alone. I'm so scared. Yes, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. Serafina had come all the way here. She must have been furious with him. But she was obedient. She must have turned back to return to the capital. Under the moonlight, Luna's tear-filled eyes suddenly struck Silas's heart. She was soaked through, her eyes full of sorrow. Serafina knew how important Luna was to him. His heart ached. But he feared Serafina might catch up with them. After all, Serafina had no other choice but to marry him. Otherwise, having fulfilled Yabsai, she would be the target of malicious gossip. Before leaving the capital, he had spread a few rumors. Hoping to make Serafina more patient and accepting of Luna in the future. He wasn't afraid of anything. Silas quickly steered the boat toward a cave nearby. Perhaps it was the seductive moonlight. Or perhaps the cold had numbed his reason. In that moment, when Luna leaned against him, he could no longer suppress his feelings and acted on them. After all, in this life, he would only have one wife and one concubine. Luna would not die. And Serafina would still be a good wife. He was certain this second chance was only to fulfill his own desires. Otherwise, how could everything align so perfectly at this moment? Thankfully, he had communicated with his mother. She would take care of everything for him. Serafina had chased him all the way here in her red wedding gown. So he needn't worry anymore. Under the moonlight, the boat sailed steadily. After only a few days, they arrived in Gyeonggan. Gyeonggan was not only beautiful, but also full of life. Zane helped me into the wedding sedan. And the whole journey was filled with joyous celebrations as I entered the estate. The entire process was smooth. And before I knew it, I was sitting on the bridal bed. We drank the marriage wine and I lifted my veil. Sharp brows, bright eyes, broad shoulders, and a narrow waist. I couldn't help but smile. It seemed I was destined to enjoy a happy life. The warm glow of the red candles flickered as we raised our cups. My heart felt at ease. Only when Perla helped me arrange my hair did I realize I had truly left my past life behind. Zane's father and mother were kind and friendly. And my husband was gentle and attentive. It reminded me of my past life. Silas had treated me roughly. His mother was harsh and full of rules. And his family had been always scheming. I had been exhausted in both mind and body. constantly worrying about dowries and preventing the Silas family from causing trouble. Compared to that, this life felt like paradise. The Zane family was prosperous and free of unnecessary troubles. Zane was their only son. On my first day in the manor, the housekeeper handed me the household seal. Although Zane often stayed away, he respected me and never made me attend social gatherings with him. Having such a husband, I was content. But this blissful life was abruptly interrupted by a problem. A delicate woman, her hands resting on her pregnant belly, came to our door. Her body unsteady, her face tear-streaked. Was I about to step back into the fire? Zane's parents looked uncomfortable but also vaguely expectant. It turned out my husband had kept a mistress. Thankfully, it seemed to have been a momentary lapse of judgment during a tender moment. As expected, men were all the same. When the beauty began to cry, I couldn't hold back any longer. In the midst of her sobs, I broke the silence. "Allow." A shout interrupted me. "No." Zane appeared in front of me, blocking my view, and turned to the woman. "My Zane family will never take a concubine. You should leave now. Unmarried and without status. This is bad for the child too. Someone, take her and make sure she drinks the medicine." With the woman's desperate cries, Zane coldly ordered for her to be dragged away. Seeing Zane's attitude, I should have been happy, but something didn't sit right. That night, Zane brought me a pot of warm tea. "Madam, don't worry. Since I married you, everything from the past is over." My relationship with her was just a calculated affair. I felt weary. It was more important to have good news soon. I covered his mouth, softly resting my head on his shoulder, holding his hand. "It's late, husband. Let's rest." The next day, after a long night, I was exhausted and couldn't move. Zane had worked hard. And finally, I was pregnant. Zane's father was overjoyed, and immediately wrote a letter to his father to announce the good news. The whole Zane family was filled with joy. But Zane, on the other hand, was troubled. Perhaps he was thinking about the mistress he had sent away to abort her child. I didn't have time to care about his mood, and simply focused on enjoying good food and drink. 5 months passed in the blink of an eye, and my belly was steadily growing. Zane's mother, following the doctor's advice, took me out shopping every few days. But one day, while Zane's mother was with me picking out fabric for clothes, Zane's father called her away urgently. With my large belly, it wasn't convenient to follow. So I stayed in the shop and waited. While browsing the fabric, a woman suddenly reached out and grabbed the fabric I was about to purchase. "Shopkeeper, I'll take this fabric." The familiar voice made me look up involuntarily. "How is it you?" Luna's pupils contracted. She quickly shoved the fabric back into my arms. She turned away, clutching her belly, and burst into tears. "Husband, my stomach hurts." I was stunned. Had Silas gotten Luna pregnant already? It must be the bond between the main characters. A figure rushed in like a whirlwind. Silas supported Luna and gently helped her sit down. Luna's voice trembled. "Husband, I want to see the doctor." Silas pulled out a bag of silver and handed it to the shopkeeper. Quickly, panting Huff felled my obsession. "Call the doctor." Luna looked even more terrified and shook her head in distress. "Husband. No. I'll go myself. This place makes me uncomfortable." Silas misunderstood her words. Turning to me, he said, "Madam, could you let my wife have the fabric? She's pregnant and can't stand the stress. Please. Madam, let her have it." I replied coldly. "No. I won't. No." Luna screamed. But it was too late. Silas stormed over, his face flushed with anger. But when he saw my cold expression, he froze. "Serafina? Is it you?" Silas's eyes widened, panic seeping into his voice. He reached out to grab my arms. "Serafina, listen to me. It's not like that with her. I have my reasons." "You." He finally noticed my round belly. His pupils shrank, and he stumbled backward. "You're not Serafina. You're not her." I gently placed my hand on my abdomen, staring at him intently. "Silas. Congratulations. You're going to be a father." He shook his head. his eyes darting nervously. No, no, no. Luna clung to him. Her eyes filled with venom. Silas. This isn't Serafina. She's already gone back to the capital. Silas shoved Luna away and rushed toward me. Serafina. I know you're angry with me. But you can't trick me with a fake pregnancy. You clearly. Enough. What do you, an unmarried woman, know about these things? Serafina. Let's get married. Right now. Let's marry today. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It was truly absurd. Silas. I don't need you. I'm already married. Stop this madness. He gripped my hand tighter. Sighing heavily. Stop saying things in anger. I'll fulfill your wish. We'll marry today. Luna clenched her fists. Her face flushed with rage. But Silas seemed to forget her presence entirely. In a desperate moment, I yanked out a hairpin and stabbed it into Silas's hand. He yelped in pain and released me. But just for a moment. Luna let out a blood-curdled scream. She lunged at me with all her might. You bitch. Why is it always like this? You promised me. You promised me. In the nick of time. Silas suddenly stepped in front of me. Blocking her. The two of them collided like arrows shot from a bow. Crashing to the ground. Luna's face twisted in pain. Blood pooling beneath her. Silas's lips went pale as he looked from me to her. Unsure of whom to choose. You. Her. The smell of blood filled the air. I spoke coldly. If you don't find a doctor soon, the child inside her will be lost. Silas snapped back to reality. Lifting Luna and rushing out. But just as he crossed the threshold, he stopped, turned, and looked at me with determination. Serafina. Don't worry. I'll come back to marry you. I almost couldn't hold back a laugh. His face flashed with embarrassment and uncertainty as he hurried away. The pool of blood drew my thoughts back to the past. When Luna died. It had been in a sea of blood just like this. It was the second day of my marriage to Silas. A scream shattered the quiet of the morning. Silas and I woke, and he gently pulled me into his arms. But Silas's servant burst in. Panic written all over his face. She's dead. Silas hastily adjusted the blankets. Leaping out of bed in anger. Who told you to barge in here with such bad news? She's dead. Luna's dead. Fury flared in Silas's eyes as he kicked the servant aside. Who cursed Luna? The servant trembled. It's outside the door. Luna's body is outside. The scream echoed in my mind. And Silas and I exchanged a glance before rushing out without a second thought. I quickly tidied myself up and followed. But the scene before me was unbelievable. Luna lay in a pool of blood, her clothes torn and her body bruised. People were starting to gather. But I couldn't bear to look. I draped the coat I had brought for Silas over her. Silas knelt beside her. Shaking his head in disbelief. This can't be. No, how could this be real? Why didn't I believe her? Why didn't I believe her? He suddenly grabbed my hand and shoved me away. His head slammed into the doorframe. And warm blood trickled from his forehead. It's you. You killed her. His eyes were bloodshot. Trembling as he gathered Luna's lifeless body into his arms. At that moment, I truly thought I had killed someone. And I felt guilty for half a lifetime. Enduring it all. Until that strange voice broke the silence. And I realized the truth. As night fell, Zane's mother rushed back in a panic. Serafina. You've been waiting for a long time. Haven't you? Had it not been for your father injuring his leg. Her hair was messy. And sweat dripped from her brow. I pretended to be worried and cut her off. Then please take me to father. He can't be in any danger. Zane's mother seemed uneasy as she gently pulled me along. Good daughter-in-law. Your father wants you to rest. And Zane is taking care of him. These days. It's been hard on you. It was just a hidden pregnancy with a mistress. Yet Zane went to such lengths to cover it up. I wouldn't stop him. A month passed. And Silas had yet to fulfill his promises. Instead, Luna came, full of zeal. She brought Zane's beautiful wife, Leela, into the house, loudly demanding to see me. The mistress, Zane's mother, terrified, tried to usher her away. But Luna stood outside, shouting for half the day, causing an uproar in the streets. I was nearing the end of my pregnancy, and the noise outside was unbearable. Finally, heading to her&asked, I stepped out, my large belly straining under the pressure of each step, as Zane's mother looked on in panic. Zane's mother. Don't you know that what you're doing is going to kill an innocent woman? Zane was frantic. Silas. I don't need your help. Silas. Enraged. Responded. Zane, her&asked. No one knows you better than I do. I've been through this myself, almost losing someone I loved. You know the law. Your wife is only venting. Now she's pregnant. So what's there to fear? Seeing this, Luna screamed even louder. Zane. I stepped out, shouting to cut her off. Luna. Have you screamed enough yet? Silas and Luna both stared at me, wide-eyed. Silas reacted quickly, rushing to grab my hand. Serafina. What are you doing here? Don't misunderstand. We're just here to help. For a moment, everything went silent. Only Zane's young wife sobbed, her face streaked with tears. Sister. How could you be here? Holding hands with another man in public? Zane's handsome face turned pale as he shoved Silas aside and pulled me into his arms. I considered you a brother. Why are you holding my wife like this? Silas stood frozen. Wife. He glanced at my swollen belly. Then at the way Zane held me. No, no. This can't be. You're supposed to be my wife. Silas reached for me again. Zane let out a low sigh. Unable to tolerate it any longer, landed a punch on Silas's face. Silas, refusing to back down, wiped the blood from his lips, clenched his fist, and retaliated. The two of them exchanged blows. A chaotic dance of anger. The cries of a baby. The chatter of the crowd. The sound of fighting. It was too much. My temper flared, and I screamed, Enough. Silas was at a disadvantage, his eyes full of longing as he stared at me with his swollen face. You really do care for me, my Serafina. Zane's veins bulged as he suddenly threw a punch, knocking Silas out cold. To avoid making a scene, Zane's mother ordered them to bring Silas inside. Zane glanced briefly at his Leela, then reached for my hand. But I pulled away. He was furious, but dared not force me. Instead, he shouted at Leela, who was holding the child and looking completely helpless. What are you waiting for? Get over here. You useless thing. She lowered her head in embarrassment, tears welling in her eyes. As she passed me, she gritted her teeth, suddenly letting go of the child. In an instant, I didn't have time to react, but Perla extended her arms, quickly rolling and catching the baby. The baby's cries rang out loudly, filling the air. Leela dropped to the ground, desperately grabbing the child, her cries heart-rending. My poor child. Madam, why are you so heartless? You can't tolerate me. But can't you at least tolerate a child? Zane quickly snatched the child away from her, immediately turning his ire on me. She's just a child. Ridiculous. I let out a cold laugh. Zane, her&asked. I never stopped you from taking a concubine. So don't pretend to be so righteous. Zane looked stunned, his eyes reddening. You don't mind? Who you take as a concubine is none of my business. If you want a divorce and want to hand over your position, that's up to you. Zane stood frozen in place, unable to comprehend what I had just said. At that moment, Silas suddenly awoke with a start. Serafina, abort the child and come back to the capital with me. Luna, clutching her large belly, bent down with difficulty, shock in her eyes. Silas, don't you want us anymore? Silas ignored her, instead struggling to crawl toward me. Serafina, let's get a divorce. Come back to the capital with me. Please. Zane shoved the child into Perla's arms and lunged forward, stepping on Silas's hand and grinding it a few times. Silas let out a heartbreaking scream. But with his eyes red, he stubbornly kept clinging to my leg. Please. Come back with me. Ah. A sharp crack sounded, followed by Luna's piercing scream. Silas's bones broke. Zane's mother, fearing I would be frightened, tried to pull me away. But Silas clung to my leg. I didn't understand. Clearly, hadn't fulfilled my instinct. Luna, whom he had been obsessed with, was right there beside him. He had hated me for a lifetime, regretting choosing me over her. Now, what exactly was he regretting? I stopped saying. And he stepped back, unable to believe what was happening. I ignored him. Instead, I asked Silas, "What do you want to say?" Blood was spilling from his mouth, but he didn't forget to provoke, saying, "Serafina, I knew you still have feelings for me." Bored. I shifted my leg slightly, sensing my movement. Silas pleaded, "Come back to the capital with me. I'll marry you." "He's not a good man, Silas. He keeps a mistress and doesn't care about you. He's violent. And unlike me, he has no title or future. He's just a wastrel. If you follow him, your life will be over." Zane couldn't take it anymore. He rushed forward and kicked Silas hard. "You're nothing. Serafina is carrying my child now." Silas spat out a mouthful of blood. "You're a useless bastard with no hope of a title or success in the exams. And you want to steal her from me?" Silas staggered to his feet and swung a punch at Zane's face. Unfortunately, heading faultily, he couldn't steady himself and fell straight to the ground. Zane stepped on him again. "You worthless fool. Go ask around. Everyone knows you're just a commoner now. Your mother died of heartbreak because of you. Your father remarried. And His Majesty issued an imperial edict this life. You'll never have a title or pass the imperial exams. Better take your woman and child and get out while you can." "Ah!" Luna suddenly collapsed, crying out in pain. Vile woman. Vile woman. Why do you always block my way? You promised me. You promised me you would never appear in front of us. You promised me you would let us be together." "What?" Silas opened his mouth wide in disbelief. "Serafina. You too." "That's right. Silas. Isn't this what you wanted? Didn't you say nothing mattered more than her life?" Zane walked to my side and took my hand. I didn't refuse. I gripped his hand in return. "Silas. He's right. You're a worthless fool. You should leave now." Zane's face flashed with a hint of triumph. Silas stared blankly, then suddenly collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Luna screamed again, her voice piercing the air. System. No, no. Don't reset. Don't restart. Ah. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted, blood pouring from her nose, eyes, and ears. Ah. Leela, seeing this, scrambled over to Zane, clutching his side. She leaned against him, but he shoved her away. "Zane." Leela's sharp cry was met with nothing but coldness from Zane. He seemed to be contemplating something. "I'm giving you two options. Either leave with the child, or..." He exhaled slowly. "You'll be dead to me." Leela trembled, her voice shaking. No, Zane," let out a low sigh. "You promised. You only love me." "If it weren't for being forced." Zane's expression suddenly cleared. "Someone. Give her a mute potion and send her away." "No." Leela glared at me. And I stepped back a few paces, hiding behind Zane. I screamed silently in my mind. Suddenly, a flash of cold light appeared. Leela had produced a small knife from nowhere and lunged at me. In the next moment, her eyes widened, and she collapsed. Zane let out a low sigh. Who had shielded me, coughed up blood and collapsed onto me. He gasped, disbelieving, as his hand brushed against the small knife lodged in his chest. "This knife. It can turn." Then, let out a low sigh. He closed his eyes. I quickly called for a doctor. Zane was lucky. His injuries were light. He wasn't sad, and by Leela's death, the first thing he did after regaining consciousness was order that Silas and the deceased Luna be put on a boat and sent back to the capital. While he wasn't looking, I swapped clothes with Perla. I gave the boatman a generous sum of silver, asking him to hurry and take Silas and Luna back to the capital. As I passed Silas, I deliberately knelt down beside him. His sorrow turned to joy. "Serafina, I knew you couldn't let me go. Quick, help me untie the ropes. We'll be married right here. On the boat." How naive. Still dreaming of spring and autumn. I stood up, dusting off my skirt. "Silas. This time, it's truly farewell. Have a good journey." I lifted the curtain of the boat and walked off. Serafina. Behind me. Silas kept calling my name. The boat set sail. And I quietly watched until the mist blurred everything. The river calm and disturbed. Zane let out a low sigh. Who had rushed to me, grasped my wrist and pulled me into his embrace, holding me tightly. My lady. I thought you had abandoned me. Listening to the steady beat of Zane's heart, my own slowly found peace. He had been bedridden due to injuries. And, out of necessity, had learned to calm his heart. I had put aside old grievances and adopted Zane's illegitimate child, later giving birth to a pair of twins. The household revered me as a benefactor, slowly placing me at the helm. Over time, even Zane's gaze toward me began to carry a trace of dependence. When the children reached their first year, I watched Zane teaching them to call him father, and understood that the time had come. Then, let out a low sigh. One day, Zane succumbed to his old injuries and died without treatment. I gained complete control of the Zane family. After Zane's death, his parents were heartbroken. But in the company of their 3 grandchildren, they slowly emerged from their grief. They feared I might remarry, so they accepted me as their own daughter. Under this guise, I gradually infiltrated every corner of their affairs. I also raised a few more children for appearances. Life was not without joy, but there was always a sense of melancholy in my heart. Congratulations, host. You have achieved the chasing wife to the grave achievement. The male lead has regretted and hung himself. The love conquest task has failed. And the pursuer dies in a foreign land. All points go to the host. And you have successfully exchanged them for a life of ease and your family's well-being. The strange voice echoed again, sweeping away the gloom in my heart. At last, I was truly reborn. Extra chapter. One Zane had always been my goal in this life. In my past life, Zane married 3 years after I did. His wife died from complications after a year, leaving behind a pair of twins. Later, Zane married a farm girl who had saved his life as his second wife. It was said that she treated her stepchildren very well. Then, let out a low sigh. Zane's father was promoted, and the entire Zane family moved to the capital. At a banquet, I learned that rumors were just rumors. I had never seen such an unusual stepmother. She favored her older daughter, but despised the younger one. Even though neither of the daughters was her own. The younger one was graceful, obedient, and well-mannered, while the older one was rude and reckless. After an altercation with a noblewoman, she even pushed the woman into the lake, trying to frame everything on the younger sister. The stepmother showed no concern for the younger daughter and, without hesitation, tried to make her take the blame. She even ordered her to commit suicide as punishment. If I hadn't been with a few of the other ladies, quietly admiring flowers and witnessing the entire scene, and then intervened to clear the younger sister's name, she would have been driven to death by her wicked stepmother. At the time, I had just struck a deal with Luna's system and was scouting potential husbands for my next life. And then Zane appeared. Though he defended his wife, his eyes held a faint trace of distaste. When he looked at his younger daughter, guilt flashed in his gaze. But then he punished both of the children. Confusion, awkwardness, love, and hatred all mixed on his face. I realized there must be some hidden truth behind it all. Looking at the crying, fragile stepmother, I wondered, how could this happen with children who weren't her own? Everything seemed illogical. After a careful inspection, I noticed something. The favored older daughter bore a striking resemblance to her. I quietly asked my older brother to investigate. It turned out that the stepmother was Zane's concubine, and the older daughter was her biological child. The younger daughter, however, was the child of Zane's deceased first wife. Zane let out a low sigh. Constrained by his concubine's status and family traditions, had to marry a well-born woman, as his parents insisted. He had tried to get the first wife to accept the concubine, but the impatient concubine, eager to take the position, had barged in, pushing the first wife into the pool during a struggle. This caused her miscarriage. Thus, two brothers bore. Both children were born on the same day, and the first wife died without surviving the ordeal. The whole story was then beautified, and the concubine successfully became the legitimate wife. I was meant to be the bride. But an innocent woman died in my place. Without hesitation, I chose Zane. As an exchange, the system granted me one wish. I placed my wish on Zane and his concubine. Zane would slowly regain his memories from his past life after I became pregnant. And the concubine would remember everything from the beginning. Aware of what would happen, the concubine hurried to get pregnant. But since the bride was now someone else, Zane regained his memories and, though still in love with her, couldn't help but feel some revulsion. As a result, he no longer obeyed her every whim. Unable to bear it, she became consumed by her desires. In the end, her own greed devoured her. She would never know that the knife that ended her was one I handed to her. One mastering Zane's heart was thanks to Luna. Afraid I would again get in her way, she painfully exchanged her points with me. In this new life, I could no longer engage with Silas. But Luna was still scared. She would often warn me not to appear before Silas, always talking about how the chasing wife to the grave method would destroy her. She said men always desired what they couldn't have and that I should keep them dangling. So I listened. I implemented the plan on Zane. After Zane regained his memories, he slowly shifted his affections toward me. I deliberately had Perla arrange a meeting between Silas and Zane, and I exchanged more points for the system to give Luna an extra mission to help someone in need. In similar circumstances, the four of us would only sympathize with each other. If Luna hadn't been so greedy, her task wouldn't have failed. She was so close to succeeding in her pursuit of Silas. But the system gave her a choice after too many failures. As long as she succeeded 90, she could return to the original world with half the points as a reward. But she refused and chose to gamble, pushing for 100 success, risking everything for the full reward or losing it all. She was foolish. She never considered what I needed her points for. She never thought about the sudden appearance of an extra task. She didn't know that my deal with the system was to raise Silas's chasing wife to the grave value, ruining Luna's love conquest mission. Luna and I had always been opposites. Originally, having fulfilled by Adsasher. In my script, Silas would return to the capital and find I had married. After chasing me, I would reject him with a big belly, and the chasing wife to the grave wouldn't fold. I had learned this tactic from Luna's own words. But I didn't expect her to accelerate the whole process. In the end, she died never knowing she was the true prey. The system wanted her life, and it would never let her return to the original world. When Silas returned to the capital, he still thought everything was just a dream. In a daze, he was cast out by his father, a target of everyone's scorn. He wandered the streets, starving and homeless. He was humiliated by beggars and nearly sold into a brothel. In the bitter cold of the night, he raised the small knife he had secretly kept, killing the beggar who had been sleeping beside him. He knelt before the Buddha, sincerely praying. If he could start over, he would first marry Serafina, then take Luna as his second wife. When the sunlight rose, there was only blood on the ground, and on Silas's broken face, a faint, relieved smile appeared. End of the main text. I was reborn on the night before our family was confiscated. Under the dim flicker of the candlelight, my father Kale, the current prime minister, looked at us with a face full of sorrow and determination. The emperor's wrath is upon us. The Silas family cannot escape. But this has nothing to do with Vanessa. She is innocent. His first love, Vanessa, the daughter of the Minister of Personnel, was implicated in a massive case involving her father's corruption and treason. As for us, the Silas family, we were merely the scapegoats of the emperor's anger. I have pleaded with the emperor to sever all ties with you. I am distancing myself for your safety. Only then can I find a way to rescue you later. Mother trembled, looking at him in disbelief. Husband, we are your legally wedded family. But Kale didn't even spare her a glance. His gaze passed over us, as though seeing his beloved Vanessa. I scoffed. In my past life, our entire family had believed his deceitful words and died miserably on the road to exile. And he, without hesitation, married Vanessa, using the wealth we had lost to live happily and rise to power. In this life, did he still think I would be his stepping stone for him and his first love? Dream on. I looked at his righteous face, And an icy voice echoed in my mind, space activated. Range, 10 cubic meters. Can be upgraded. Father is right. You must sever all ties with us. You are the only hope for the Silas family. And you mustn't fall into trouble. As soon as I spoke, everyone froze. My brother Silas, both shocked and angry, looked at me. Lyra, what are you talking about? Mother, too, nearly fainted, and was supported by my sister-in-law. Only my father Cale showed a look of relief and emotion on his face. Lyra understands. Rest assured. I will compensate you in the future. I silently sneered inside but kept my expression sincere. We all understand. Father. You should go to Vanessa's family. She must be scared and needs you. I stressed the words, Vanessa's family, deliberately. Cale's expression stiffened for a moment. But quickly, he returned to his love-struck appearance. He nodded heavily, as if making some great decision. Take care of yourselves. With that, he turned and left without a second glance. His steps hurried, without a hint of lingering attachment. As soon as he left, my brother Silas slammed his fist into a pillar. He only cares about that woman. What are we to him? Mother collapsed on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. My son. What will we do now? My sister-in-law, too, with red eyes, clutched her 3-year-old son. Helpless and bewildered, looking at my despairing family, I calmly closed the door. My voice, though not loud, clearly reached everyone's ears. Why cry? If you have energy to cry, use it to move things. Silas spun around angrily. Move things? Lyra, we're being raided. Even if we move things, we can't take them with us. I walked up to him and stared him in the eye. Brother, trust me. As long as we can move, I have a way to take everything with us. Right now. Immediately. Go and bring everything valuable from the storage: gold, silver, jade, antiques, silk, and all the rest. Bring it all to my courtyard. Also, I turned to my sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, go to the kitchen. Pack up all the food: rice, flour, oil, cured meats, dried goods. Don't leave anything behind. I looked at Mother next. Mother, gather all your jewelry, land deeds, silver notes, everything. Not a single piece should remain. My calmness infected them. In this house, my father was the pillar, and my brother was our future hope. But now, the pillar ran off for another woman, and my brother, a scholarly weakling, was utterly disoriented. Only I, having experienced death and betrayal, knew exactly what to do now. Hurry! I snapped. My family, like finding a backbone, immediately sprang into action. The Silas family storage was vast, as expected of a prime minister's estate. Gold, silver, jewels, silks, and antiques piled up like mountains. These were all my mother's dowry and my grandfather's support for Cale's political career. Now, he planned to use these treasures to save his first love and pave his own path to success. I watched as servants moved boxes of valuables to my courtyard, my gaze growing colder. Miss, the storage is empty. The butler panted as he reported. I nodded, dismissed everyone, and remained in the courtyard alone. Looking at the piles of gold and silver, I focused my thoughts. Would you like to store the items in space? Yes. In the next second, all the boxes, along with their contents, vanished without a trace. I stepped into the space. This was a strange place. About 10 square meters. All white. The boxes were neatly stacked in the corners. Space upgrade. Current level 2. Range, 100 cubic meters. Bonus, freshness function. Very good. I sneered. Step 1. Complete. Now, it was time to collect some interest. Cale's private vault was hidden in the secret room of his study. I learned of this secret from Vanessa's boasting in my past life. She said Cale had given her all his wealth, more than she could spend in several lifetimes. I easily found a mechanism. The secret room opened, and the sight inside made me gasp. Gold bars were stacked like a city wall, and boxes of jewels sparkled under the light of night pearls. On the walls, Priceless famous paintings hung. At the most prominent spot was a rosewood box. I opened it. And inside were deeds and business contracts. Shops in the most prosperous areas of the capital. Vast farmlands outside the city. Nearly a third of the capital's wealth. These he had never mentioned to his family. This was his capital for building a love nest with Vanessa. Heh. Dream on. Without hesitation. I thought to myself. And moved the entire vault, every last thing. Even the night pearls embedded in the walls, into my space. Space upgrade. Current level 3. Range 1000 cubic meters. Bonus, land 1 mil. A patch of black soil appeared in the space. Along with a clear stream. I threw the paintings onto the ground and opened another small box. Inside, instead of gold, were a thick stack of letters. The stationery was top-tier Chang Xi ending paper. The handwriting unmistakably Kale's. Filled with his admiration and longing for Vanessa. Vanessa. My love. To not see Vanessa is like 3 autumns. Once I clear the obstacles, I will prepare a 10-mile bridal procession and make you my wife, freshess. I looked at the dates on the letters. The most recent one from yesterday. The obstacles he referred to were none other than us. His inconvenient family. What a deeply devoted prime minister. I stored the letters in the space. This was valuable, useful in the future. After emptying Kale's private vault, I didn't stop. Changing into a night outfit, I quietly left the prime minister's residence. My next target, Vanessa's family. Vanessa's household had already been sealed off. Soldiers posted outside the gate. That hardly fazed me. I slipped in through the dog hole in the backyard. In my previous life I had crawled through worse to deliver a letter to Kale. Vanessa's boudoir was actually a separate suite Kale had outfitted for her. The courtyard was small but exquisitely appointed. The furnishings inside were more luxurious than my mother's formal parlor. I moved through her bedroom as if I'd been there 100 times. A stale trace of intimacy lingered in the air. I scowled in disgust and began to sweep the place clean. Vanessa's jewelry box was full of top-tier pieces, Eastern pearls, pigeon blood rubies, mud and fat jade, every kind of treasure. Her wardrobe hung with precious young brocades and shoe embroideries. Fabric so fine even some palace consorts might envy them. All of it had been bought by my father Kale with the money of the Silas clan. I stuffed everything into my space at once. Even the bed they had tangled on. In a hidden compartment under the bed I found a small chest. Inside were not only stacks of silver notes, but also an account ledger. I flipped through it casually and my heart lurched. It recorded, in cold, clear entries, evidence that Vanessa's father, the Minister of Rights Derek, had colluded with many court ministers to form factions and take bribes. And my father Kale's name was in those entries. So Derek's fall wasn't an accident, he'd brought it on himself. And my father, to keep his own hands clean, had shoved the entire Silas family out to take the blame. He hadn't been punished by mistake. He'd sacrificed the family to save himself. Fine. Very well. I tucked the ledger and the silver away carefully. The hatred in my chest nearly swallowed me. Kale? Vanessa, you wicked pair. Just wait. By the time I left Vanessa's house, pale light was paling the sky. But I wasn't done. I looked toward the palace and let a mad smile spread across my face. The emperor was about to confiscate my family's property? Then I'd start with his. Relying on memories from my past life, I slipped past every patrol and made my way to the emperor's private treasury, the Jianjiang vault. The guards there were 100 times stricter than at Vanessa's. But I had my space. I hid in the shadows and focused my mind on the vault. Target volume too large to contain at once. Choose internal extraction? The next instant I felt my spiritual energy being drained. A dizzy wave washed over my head, but I gritted my teeth and held on. Within the space, mountains of gold and silver rose out of nowhere. Crates of rare treasures appeared. And countless weapons and suits of armor materialized. Space upgraded. Current level 4. Capacity, 10. 0 cubic meters. Bonus, a spiritual spring. The little stream I'd used before had become a steaming spring. Drinking from it restored my spent spirit at once. Nice. I didn't linger. I then turned to the National Granary and Treasury, where the state's taxes and provisions were stored. I didn't take everything, only half the gold and silver and 2/3 of the grain. Leave some for the future. I don't want the emperor to be driven to madness. That's more than enough. A kingdom's coffers and granaries had suddenly lost a large portion of their contents. I could already picture the expressions on the ministers of revenue and war when they discovered the shortages tomorrow. It warmed me to the bone. You bastard emperor. You wanted to plunder my family, now feel what it's like. Finally I raided the imperial apothecary. Sweeping up its rare medicinals, 1,000-year ginseng, snow lotus, Wishi, every precious herb I could carry. Those would be lifesavers on the road to exile. When I returned to the Silas compound it was full daylight. The confiscation troops had arrived. Their leader was the Forbidden Army commander Gareth, a man whose face was all butcher's cheek and scowl. He looked at us like a flock of lambs to be slaughtered. By imperial decree confiscate the Kale household. The entire Kale clan is to be seized and exiled 3,000 and lead to the frontier marshes. Never to return to the capital. The soldiers surged in like wolves. My mother and sister-in-law went white with fear. My brother Silas pushed forward in anger and was shoved to the ground by 2 soldiers. I helped him up and watched everything with cold composure. The soldiers ransacked the rooms, overturning chests, and then one by one they froze in disbelief. Boss, this room's cleaner than a face. The storeroom's empty. Not a single thing. There isn't even a grain of rice in the kitchen. Gareth's face went the color of pig liver. He stormed through the empty rooms, unable to believe his eyes. Confiscating the house had turned into a hollow victory. How would he save face when this news spread? Search. Dig up the yard if you have to. I don't believe a chancellor's mansion could be empty of a single copper coin. They nearly tore up the floor tiles. But the result was the same. Except for the house itself. There was nothing. Gareth, boiling with rage, grabbed my brother by the collar. Tell me, where did you hide everything? My brother, blood at the corner of his mouth from the blow, only sneered. Your father Kale kicked us out and disowned us. We have nothing. You. Gareth raised his hand to strike. I stepped between them and looked him squarely in the face. Gareth, we truly have no money. If you don't believe me, you can ask my father, the Imperial Chancellor Kale. Ask Kale Papa. I emphasized Imperial Chancellor on purpose. Gareth's movement froze. No matter how fierce he was, he wouldn't dare offend someone the Emperor favored. Everyone in the capital already knew Kale had publicly severed ties with us. His coming to confiscate the house was merely following orders. If anything happened to us, Kale would have a hard time explaining it. After all, to outsiders we were still his kin. Hurting us would be slapping his own face. Gareth glared at me viciously but let go in the end. Fine, you're heartless. Guards, put the manacles on them and march. Heavy wooden yokes clamped around our necks. I glanced back at the empty mansion and a barely noticeable curve tugged at my lips. Kill you bastard emperor. The game had only just begun. The exile caravan moved out, magnificent in its scale. Besides the 4 of us, there were dozens of collateral relatives. They wailed and cursed Kale for his cruelty. My mother and sister-in-law were swept up in the grief and cried silently. Only I observed everything with icy detachment. 100 soldiers escorted us, Gareth at their head. It was obvious he was furious at finding nothing. On the road he beat and berated us whenever he pleased. The daily rations were to dry, rock-hard black buns and a bowl of thin gruel so clear you could see your reflection in it. Many of the pampered relatives couldn't bear such hardship and fell ill on the very first day. The soldiers didn't care in the slightest. If you were sick, you dragged yourself along. If you died, they dug a shallow pit and buried you wherever you fell. At night, we were herded into a crumbling temple to sleep. It was damp and clammy, the wind cutting like knives. Mother's health had never been good. After one night of that bitter cold, she began to burn with fever, muttering nonsense in her delirium. My sister-in-law clutched her hand, weeping. Mother, are you all right? My brother Silas paced in panic, rushing to beg the soldiers for a little hot water or some medicine, only to be kicked back into the dirt. Get lost. You're a prisoner and you want medicine? Drop dead on the road. That'll save me the rations. Silas's eyes were red as he stared at our unconscious mother in helpless despair. I signaled him to hold back. Once everyone had fallen asleep, I quietly drew a thick quilt from my space and covered Mother with it. Then I took out a fever-reducing pill from the Imperial Pharmacy, dissolved it in spirit spring water, and fed it to her. The effect of the spirit spring water was immediate. Her burning forehead cooled. Her breathing steadied. I let out a slow breath of relief. Then I produced something even more outrageous, say small copper hot pot. Fresh lamb slices. Crisp green vegetables. Golden corn. All kinds of meatballs and mushrooms. The broth was a rich, bubbling bone stock, sending out mouth-watering steam. Shielding the firelight with my body, I lowered my voice, "Brother. Sister-in-law. Come eat." Silas and my sister-in-law stared as though they'd seen a miracle. "Lyra. Where did all this come from?" Silas stammered. I tossed out a casual excuse. "I hid it away beforehand. Eat. You need strength to keep walking." Though full of questions, hunger triumphed over reason. The three of them crowded round the little hot pot, devouring the food. Warm food in their bellies drove out the cold and exhaustion, easing their despair. "It's so good." My sister-in-law's eyes filled with tears. I thought I'd never eat anything hot again in this life. Silas's eyes were red as he chewed the lamb. He looked at me, guilt and gratitude warring in his gaze. "Lyra, your brother has been useless. I've let you suffer. From now on, I'll protect you and Mother." I smiled, dropping another slice of meat into his bowl. "We're family. No need for words. Eat up, there's a long road tomorrow." That hot pot not only filled our stomachs, it drew the shards of our family back together, warming us with a fragile hope. The next morning, Mother woke. Though still weak, she was out of danger. Seeing us all looking unexpectedly refreshed, Gareth's face darkened. "What's this? The Silas clan made of iron? Everyone else is half dead. But you lot look fine." I gave him a cool glance. "Must be thanks to Commander Zhang helped us get used to it early." Gareth choked on my retort, snarled at MBH, and barked for the convoy to move. From then on, our family began a secret gourmet exile. By day, we gnawed the black buns like the other prisoners, feigning half-death. By night, once all were asleep, we improved our meals in temples or caves. One night it was roast chicken, the next braised pork, then fresh fish soup. Occasionally I brought out fruit slichies. Cherries impossible for the season. Mother, Silas, and my sister-in-law grew visibly rosier by the day. Even little Stone, her 3-year-old son, put on weight. Our odd behavior naturally stirred Gareth's suspicion. More than once he staged surprise inspections at night to catch us. But with my spiritual sense, I felt him coming from afar. By the time he arrived, we had erased all traces and lay on the ground feigning sleep. After several failures, he could only conclude we were freakishly hardy and gradually stopped bothering. "Lyra, aren't we being too conspicuous?" Mother asked one evening as we hid in a cave, eating beggar's chicken. I tore off a drumstick and handed it to her. "Don't worry, Mother. I know what I'm doing." All this time, I'd been using gold and silver from my space to quietly grease the palms of a few pliable soldiers. Human nature is greedy. At first they were wary. But when they saw all I wanted was a little convenient, say separate mule cart for us, a blind eye when we were ill, they accepted. With Gareth's foul temper making their lives miserable, they were glad enough to oblige. With the cart, Mother, my sister-in-law, and little Stone no longer had to walk by day. At night became our private mobile restaurant. I even lined it with soft bedding and lit calming incense. Cue outsiders. We were still shackled prisoners. In reality, our days were better than in the capital. The collateral relatives watched as we grew healthier while they hovered at death's door, their eyes full of jealousy and resentment. One sharp-tongued damp finally sneered. "Well, sister-in-law, you're certainly capable. This exile's like a sightseeing tour for you." Mother, never one for confrontation, lowered her head in silence. I didn't indulge her. With a cold smile I said, "What's wrong? Envious? Why don't you go to my father and have him sever ties with you, to maybe you'll live as easily as we do?" Her face went green, then white. When Kale had cut ties, they had secretly rejoiced, thinking we of the main line were the scapegoats. Now, seeing us thrive, Their hearts turned sour. You unfilial girl. How dare you call your father by name? My father? I said lightly. My father died the day he cast us off to be raided and exiled. The silence was absolute. They looked into my icy eyes and dared not utter another word. From that day on, no one gossiped in our presence again. I understood well, on this brutal road of exile, sympathy and softness were useless. To survive, you had to be harder than anyone else. We had been on the road for over a month when we finally left the heartland of the Central Plains and entered the so-called wild frontier. The weather grew unbearably hot, with poisonous insects everywhere and miasma suffusing the air. As the days passed, more and more people in the caravan fell ill. Every day, someone died. Even the soldiers escorting us were not immune. Several of them were struck by the miasma, vomiting and suffering from diarrhea. On the brink of death, Gareth, the leader, was as restless as a trapped beast. At this rate, he wouldn't even make it to the frontier before losing half of his 100-man team. That night, one of his subordinates, the one I had bribed, quietly approached me. "Lyra," he said, his face full of desperation. "We're dying out here. Can you, please, help us?" I looked at him, silent, neither agreeing nor refusing. He grew anxious and quickly pulled out a small cloth pouch, pressing it into my hand. "This is just a token from us brothers. A small gesture of respect. If you help us, we'll do anything you ask in the future." I weighed the pouch in my hand. Inside were a few broken silver pieces. I sneered inwardly but kept my face neutral. "You're suffering from miasma. I happen to have some herbs that may help." I took out a few detoxifying herbs from my space. The finest from the Imperial Pharmacy. More than enough to counter the miasma. The deputy officer gratefully accepted them and brewed a medicinal concoction for the 6 soldiers to drink. By the next day, heading fulfilled land session, they had all recovered. The entire caravan buzzed with excitement. Gareth himself came to find me, his attitude softer than before. "Silas, I didn't expect you to know medicine." "Just a little," I replied coolly. Gareth rubbed his hands together, his awkwardness palpable. "The miasma is severe, and there are still many of my men affected. Do you think you could?" "Sure." I interrupted him before he could finish. "But I have conditions." "What conditions?" "Just tell me. First, remove the shackles from all of my family members. Second, provide enough food and water for us. Third, from now on, I'll lead the caravan, and your men will follow my orders." Gareth's face dark, and in an instant. "Lyra, don't get greedy. Don't forget, you're just a prisoner." I laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "A prisoner? Gareth, open your eyes and look. Who's asking for help now? Without me, how many of you would make it out of this forest alive?" I pointed to the dense, suffocating rainforest around us. The venomous insects. The miasma, any one of them could take your life. But I have the means to lead you out. You. Gareth was speechless, unable to counter my words. He knew I was right. I added the final blow. "Or, we part ways here. My family has a mule cart and supplies. We'll survive to the frontier. As for you, good luck." Gareth's expression changed several times. But in the end, he gritted his teeth. "Fine. I'll agree to your terms." When the shackles were removed, my mother's eyes filled with tears of joy. My brother Silas looked at me, his eyes full of admiration and pride. I had become the de facto leader of the exile caravan. I instructed Gareth's men to gather all the sick people and began reading them with my herbs. I also took out some insect-repellent powders from my space and distributed them to everyone. I taught them how to identify edible wild vegetables and fruits, how to find clean water sources in the rainforest. My knowledge and abilities completely won over everyone, even the distant relatives who had once mocked us. Now they looked at me with respect and dependence. Even Gareth had become more polite, his words carrying a hint of flattery. Under my leadership, the caravan moved forward in an orderly fashion. Though the conditions remained harsh, no one else died from disease or hunger. One day, as we rested by a river, a commotion suddenly erupted from the forest. A group of ragged men wielding curved blades rushed out, surrounding us. They were bandits. The soldiers immediately drew their swords, forming a protective circle around us. Their faces tense. Gareth's face dark, and as he spoke to me in a low voice. These are the notorious black-wined mountain bandits. Ruthless and brutal. We're in trouble now. The bandit leader, a one-eyed man, grinned as he scanned us, his gaze lingering on the women. Well, who would have thought there'd be so many delicate women in a place like this? Brothers, we're in luck today. The bandits erupted in lewd laughter. My mother and sister-in-law hid behind me, trembling with fear. Gareth stepped forward, trying to muster some authority. We are Imperial soldiers. Who are you to dare rob an official convoy? The one-eyed leader seemed to find this a great joke. Soldiers? I kill soldiers. In these black-wined woods. I'm the king. He waved his hand. Brothers, attack. Kill the men. Take the women. A bloody melee erupted instantly. The soldiers were well trained. But after such a long journey, they were exhausted, and the bandits were strong and fearless. It didn't take long before the soldiers were overwhelmed, suffering heavy casualties. Gareth, covered in blood, was surrounded by two bandits and was barely holding his ground. It looked like we were about to be wiped out. My brother Silas picked up a knife, trembling as he stepped in front of me. Lyra, don't be afraid, I'll protect you. I patted his shoulder and stepped around him. I took something from my space, a unique, black crossbow. It was a masterpiece from the previous dynasty's mechanical master, said to be capable of firing 10 bolts at once, each with incredible penetrating power and a range of 100 steps. I didn't even have time to give it a name. The one-eyed leader noticed me and licked his lips, walking toward me. Little lady, you're quite the looker. Don't be afraid, I'll take good care of you. I watched him, a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. When he was 10 steps away, I pulled the trigger. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 10 poison bolts shot out in a flash, streaking through the air like streaks of dark light. The lecherous grin on the one-eyed leader's face froze as multiple blood holes appeared in his chest. He looked down in disbelief before collapsing to the ground. The entire area fell deathly silent. Everyone was stunned by the sudden turn of events. The remaining bandits, seeing their leader's corpse and then glancing at the repeating crossbow in my hand, were filled with fear. A demon. I'm not sure who shouted. But at that moment, the entire group of bandits collapsed. They dropped their weapons and fled into the woods, pissing themselves. And just like that, the crisis was averted. Gareth, clutching his wound, limped toward me, looking at the repeating crossbow in my hand with a complex expression. Silas, this is a family heirloom for self-defense, I said with an unchanging expression as I put the crossbow away. Gareth opened his mouth but said nothing in the end. He simply bowed deeply to me. Thank you, Silas, for saving my life. From that moment on, my position in the group was unshakable. After repelling the bandits, we seized a large stockpile of weapons and a dozen good horses they had left behind. I distributed the weapons to the stronger men in the group, including my brother Silas and several uncles and cousins from the collateral branches of the family, forming an impromptu guard. With our own armed forces, I finally felt a sense of security. Gareth's injury was severe, but I used the best wound medicine from the Imperial Pharmacy to treat him. He was deeply grateful, listening to my every word from then on. The 100 soldiers were completely under my command. Our group was no longer a band of helpless prisoners, but a well-organized, armed, and capable team. After over half a month of travel, we finally saw the outline of the border city. It was a solitary, dilapidated fortress standing alone on the desolate Gobi Desert. The city walls were low, riddled with gaps, as if they could collapse at any moment. This was our place of exile, Yenju City, a forgotten corner of the world. Everyone's heart sank. The hope that had been kindled by my leadership had been extinguished when we saw the lifeless city. My God! This is where we'll spend the rest of our lives? Can anyone survive here? There's not even a blade of grass. Despair spread once more. Mother clutched my hand, her voice trembling. Lyra, I took her hand in mine, speaking with firm conviction. Mother, don't be afraid. As long as I'm here, not only will we survive, but we'll live better than we ever did in the capital. I stared at the decaying city in the distance, my gaze burning with fire, not despair. The capital was a paradise for the rich, but a hell for us. Here, though barren, was a land with no master. A blank slate, where I could draw the most beautiful blueprint. A new kingdom would be built here, with my own hands. Entering Yenju City, the sight before us was even more miserable than we'd imagined. The streets were empty, with collapsed houses and bones scattered everywhere. The air was thick with the stench of decay. This wasn't a city, it was more like a massive graveyard. We were received by an old, gaunt soldier, his face ashen, who claimed to be the city's commander. He had less than 10 sickly and disabled men under his command. According to him, Yenju City had once been home to several hundred families. But due to years of drought and bandit raids, those who could escape had fled. The rest mostly died from hunger or disease. "AI, you've come here, too? You're just as good as dead." The old soldier sighed, his gaze full of pity as he looked at us. We were settled in a relatively intact part of the ruins. That night, a sandstorm hit. The fierce wind whipped up yellow dust, as if it wanted to swallow the entire world. We hid in the broken house, listening to the wailing wind outside, and all fell silent. This was nature's warning to us. In the middle of the night, after the storm had subsided, I gathered everyone. I looked at their faces, all tired and dejected, and spoke aloud. "I know what you're all thinking. You think this place is hell, and we're doomed. But," I changed my tone, "I want to tell you that not only will we survive, but we will build a new home here." I took out several bags from my space. There was snow-white rice, golden millet, and various beans and wheat seeds. "This is food. Enough for all of us to last a year," I continued, pulling out various tools, axes, saws, and shovels. "These are tools. Enough to rebuild our home." Lastly, I spread out a large map on the ground. It was a detailed city plan, with sturdy city walls, neatly arranged houses, wide streets, and a complete irrigation system and defense works. This is our future. As long as we work together, within 3 years, I can turn this place into what's on this map. Everyone was stunned by the vision I painted. They looked at the piles of food and tools, and the beautifully drawn plan, and the fire that had once gone out in their eyes was reignited. My brother Silas was the first to step forward, his voice filled with excitement. "I believe you, Lyra. Whatever you say, we'll do it." Gareth and his men also stood up. "Silas, we'll follow your lead." The collateral relatives voiced their support as well. At the crossroads of life and death, everyone chose to place their trust in me, the one person who could offer them hope. I looked at them, my heart filled with ambition. "Good. From today on, this place will no longer be called Yenju City. It has a new name, Ningyuan City. Ningyuan, meaning peace and hope, and Liraj is my name. The far part stands for a distant future. The blood of a builder, a true architect, awakened in me." The very next day, I began the great transformation. The first step was to solve the water problem. Without water, everything else was meaningless. I led the team in surveying the city, and with the special perception granted by the spirit spring in my space, we quickly found the richest underground water vein. "This is it. Dig here." All the able-bodied men, including Silas and Gareth, pitched in to dig the well. We had no professional equipment, so we used the most primitive method, digging a shovel at a time. After 3 days and nights, just as everyone was about to lose hope, muddy water burst from the well's bottom. We've struck water. Water's flowing. The entire Ningyuan city erupted in excitement. The people cheered, embraced, and wept with joy. With water came life. I immediately began to plan the land. Mixing the black soil from my space with regular sandy earth, I created a fertile field. Then, let out a low sigh. I took out the improved, high-yield, drought-resistant potato, corn, and sweet potato seeds from the modern world. To the people of this era, These crops were nothing short of miraculous. I personally taught them how to plant and nurture seedlings. My mother and sister-in-law took charge of the logistics, organizing the women to set up a communal kitchen, mend clothes, care for children and the wounded, and keep everyone's lives running smoothly. Through everyone's combined effort, Ningyuan City flourished at an incredible pace. The collapsed houses were cleared away, and new, sturdier mud brick homes rose from the ground. The barren land sprouted lush green seedlings. The low city walls were raised and reinforced, complete with arrow towers and watchers. We even established a rudimentary brick kiln to fire bricks, preparing for the construction of sturdier buildings in the future. In just 3 months, Ningyuan City had taken shape. The city buzzed with activity, laughter, and hope. Everyone, from the youngest to the oldest, held me the 16-year-old city lord in heartfelt respect and admiration. Naturally, having fulfilled Laogai, the development of Ningyuan City caught the attention of surrounding powers. The first to approach us were several nearby nomadic tribes. These tribes were originally the masters of this land, and seeing us outsiders not only survive but thrive, they felt both envy and greed. One day, an emissary from a tribe arrived at the city with dozens of mounted warriors. The emissary was arrogant, claiming that this land belonged to them and demanding we leave immediately or pay them half of our annual harvest as protection money. On the city walls, my brother Silas's face turned pale with fury. This is too much. We've worked so hard to cultivate this land, why should we give it to them? Gareth clenched his fists, ready to fight. City Lord, give the order. Let's fight them. I shook my head. Fighting them head-on would be the last resort. Our strength was still weak, and we couldn't afford the toll of war. I climbed to the city tower and looked down at the tribal emissary, raising my voice for all to hear. We can't give you our harvest, but we can do business. Business? The emissary hesitated. Yes. I took out a pouch of pure white salt and a bolt of smooth silk from my space. Exchange your cattle, sheep, and horses for our salt, cloth, grain, and iron goods. It will benefit both of us. In the borderlands, salt and iron were more valuable than gold. The emissary's eyes immediately lit up. The mounted warriors behind him stirred, clearly understanding the value of what I offered. The emissary paused for a moment, but was quickly swayed by the tremendous profit. All right. I'll report back to the chief. But how do I know you're not tricking us? I smiled and instructed someone to lower a small pouch of salt and a piece of cloth from the tower. This is a down payment. 3 days from now, I will wait for you outside the city. Bring your sincerity. 3 days later, the tribe's chief, accompanied by a large herd of cattle, sheep, and horses, arrived outside the city. We successfully completed our first trade. We exchanged inexpensive salt and cloth for much-needed meat and livestock. This news spread like wildfire across the plains. More and more tribes, driving cattle and sheep, came to Ningyuan City to trade. Ningyuan City had become a thriving new trade hub. Time passed quickly, and 3 years had gone by in the blink of an eye. Ningyuan City had completely transformed. The high, sturdy city walls could withstand any attack. Inside the city, streets paved with blue bricks crisscrossed, lined with densely packed shops and homes. We had cultivated tens of thousands of acres of fertile land, and the improved crops had yielded a bountiful harvest, so much food that it couldn't all be consumed. We had set up various workshops spinning, ironworking, pottery making, winemaking. Our products were traded far and wide, bringing back gold, silver, and other valuable resources. Our population had grown from just a few hundred to nearly 50,000. We had sheltered refugees, attracted merchant caravans, and many nomadic tribes had settled here. My brother Silas had grown working, pottery making, winemaking. Our products were traded far and wide, bringing back gold, silver, and other valuable resources. Our population had grown from just a few hundred to nearly 50,000. We had sheltered refugees, attracted merchant caravans, and many nomadic tribes had settled here. My brother Silas had grown from a delicate speller to a composed and capable government official, managing everything in the city with order and precision. My sister-in-law took charge of education and healthcare, founding schools and clinics, ensuring every child could learn and every patient could receive treatment. My mother managed our finances and had become Ningyuan City's goddess of wealth. Gareth and his men had become our most loyal army, the Ningyuan army. They were well equipped and highly trained, having wiped out countless bandits, keeping the city safe. As for me, the supreme city lord of Ningyuan, I had become increasingly idle. My favorite thing to do every day was stand at the highest tower, watching over the prosperous and vibrant city I had built. The citizens of the city lived peaceful, contented lives, their faces full of happiness. Every time I saw this scene, my heart swelled with a sense of unparalleled accomplishment. This, to me, felt more fulfilling than any act of revenge. I imagined that the people in the capital had probably long forgotten about us, the criminals exiled here. Perhaps it was better that way. We had our own kingdom now, and no longer needed anyone's approval. However, just when we thought we could forget them, they chose to show up at our door. One day, while my brother and I were discussing new trade routes, a soldier came to report with a strange expression. "City Lord, a group of people have arrived outside the city, claiming to be emissaries from the capital, asking to see you." The capital? Emissaries? My brother and I exchanged a glance, surprise and a hint of mockery in our eyes. After 3 years, they finally remembered us? "Let them in," I said coolly. Soon, let out a low sigh. A eunuch dressed in a brocade robe, with a pale face and no beard, strutted into the city, flanked by a group of imperial guards. He glanced at my brother and me with disdain before speaking in a high-pitched voice. "Which of you is Lyra? Shouldn't you kneel and receive the imperial decree?" My brother's face immediately darkened. I, however, smiled. Sitting in the highest seat of the city, I remained motionless, watching him with keen interest. "Oh? What decree? Let me hear it." The eunuch's face shifted, and he shrieked. "How dare you? When you receive the imperial decree, it is as if you're meeting the emperor. You dare not kneel?" I picked up the tea beside me, gently blowing on it to cool it, and said slowly, "Lord Eunuch, I think you've mistaken something. This is Ningyuan City, not your Dakian capital. Here, I am the law. You." The eunuch was trembling with rage, his finger shaking as he pointed at me. "I advise you to speak quickly, or get it over with," I said coldly. "My patience is limited." The eunuch, intimidated by my presence, finally and willingly pulled a bright yellow imperial edict from his sleeve and began to read aloud. "By the emperor's command, the Kale family, notorious traitors, has made contributions to the state in the borderlands, educating the barbarians and expanding the territories. I am greatly pleased and, in my mercy, I hereby pardon all of you, restoring your former positions. And you are to return to the capital immediately to repay the emperor's grace." The edict was long and nauseating, full of the emperor's self-promotion and his so-called grace upon us. The gist of it was clear: you did a good job at the border, but now the country needs you. Come back, hand over your land and wealth, and continue serving the emperor like dogs. After reading the edict, the eunuch regained his haughty demeanor and looked at me sideways. "Lyra, awaka, aren't you going to thank the emperor and receive his order?" I looked at him, as if observing a clown. "Is that all?" "That's all." "Then get out." "What did you say?" The eunuch could hardly believe his ears. I stood up and walked step by step toward him. Looking down at him, I said, "Get out. How dare you disobey the emperor's order? Are you conspiring against the emperor?" The eunuch screamed in a shrill, shriveled voice. "Conspiring?" I let out a laugh. "Eunuch, do you even know where you are? These people recognize me as the city lord, not some worthless emperor." I waved my hand, and Gareth immediately led a team of fully armed soldiers from Ningyuan City to storm in, surrounding the imperial guests. The imperial guards, seeing our soldiers in their fine armor and cold weapons, immediately quivered, their legs turning to jelly. "Go back and tell the dog emperor," I whispered in the eunuch's ear, in a voice only the two of us could hear. 3 years ago, he discarded us here like trash. 3 years later. Everything here has nothing to do with him. If he wants Ningyuan City, fine. Let him come himself. With his army. Oh, and by the way. I stood up straighter and smiled. Say hello to my dear father. The current chancellor. Kale. Tell him the daughter he abandoned and is doing just fine here at the border. Better than he could ever aspire to in his life. I looked at the eunuch's ashen face. A wave of satisfaction washing over me. Gareth? I commanded. Throw them out of the city. Yes, head in Sosil Wan Seshern. My lord. The eunuch and his guards were dragged out of the city lord's mansion, treated like stray dogs, and thrown beyond the city gates. The citizens of the city cheered at the sight. Well done. Those dog officials from the capital were no good. Exactly. We're doing just fine now. Why should we listen to them? The hearts of the people were with me. I stared toward the capital. My gaze cold. Emperor. Kale. Your nightmare is just beginning. News of the messenger's expulsion soon reached the capital. It said that the emperor was so enraged in the court that he smashed his beloved jade Uyui, howling that he would send a large army to flatten Ningyuan City. But he quickly realized he had no army left to send. 3 years ago, I had emptied the national treasury, leaving the military funds severely lacking. In the past few years, natural disasters and human-made calamities had come one after another, the northern barbarian invasions and southern peasant uprisings, leaving him overwhelmed. The treasury empty, and unable to support another large-scale war. He could only watch helplessly as I, the traitor, roamed free at the border, growing stronger by the day. As for my father, Kale, things were even worse for him. He had nearly emptied the family fortune to protect Manessa. He had hoped to rebuild his wealth with the emperor's favor and his private funds. But he didn't expect that I would empty his private vault as well. In one night, he went from a chancellor richer than entire nations to a pauper. Vanessa, that woman, revealed her true colors the moment he fell from grace. She ran off with a newly risen nobleman, taking the last of Kale's wealth with her. Kale was struck with a double blow and fell ill, unable to recover. When he finally got better, he realized that the world had changed. In the court, everyone was fearful, factions forming and tearing each other apart. The emperor, dissatisfied with Kale's failure to manage things, began to neglect him more and more. He remembered us, the family he had abandoned, and thought of the prosperous kingdom I had built on the border. He began to regret his actions. He sent me a letter, expressing his deep remorse, claiming that he had been blinded by greed and begging for my forgiveness, asking me to help him, for the sake of our father-daughter bond. I looked at the letter, so sincere in tone, and felt nothing but disgust. I sent the letter, along with the love letters he had written to Vanessa and the account book detailing his corruption, back to the capital. I also made sure to have countless copies of these items distributed all over the streets of the capital. The entire capital was in an uproar. The morally upright Kale, it turned out, was nothing more than a man who abandoned his wife and children for his mistress. A corrupt villain. Kale's reputation was thoroughly ruined. In order to quell the public outrage and find a scapegoat, the emperor ordered his dismissal and imprisonment in the dungeon. The once powerful chancellor had fallen from grace. When I received the news, I was out in the newly established ranch outside Ningyuan City, enjoying the sight of herds of cattle and sheep, feeling content. My brother Silas stood beside me, sighing. Good and evil are repaid in the end. He got what he deserved. I nodded. As for Kale, I no longer harbored any hatred for him. Now, he was nothing more than a stranger. Irrelevant to me. Let him live in regret and shame, it would hurt him more than killing him. Our lives, however, continued. Ningyuan City was growing increasingly prosperous, and our army was becoming stronger. We had opened the Silk Road to the western regions, and our merchant caravans were selling goods from Ningyuan City to far-off places. We had become the undisputed rulers of this land. 2 years passed, and the great Qian dynasty, torn by internal strife and external threats, collapsed. The Central Plains fell into chaos, a battleground for warlords. Countless refugees, fleeing from the flames of war, streamed into Ningyuan City. We opened the city gates and welcomed them with open arms. Our city grew even larger and stronger because of it. Standing on the highest tower, I gazed down at the glowing city below, bustling with life and movement. My family stood behind me, each of them wearing expressions of happiness and fulfillment. My mother held my hand, her voice filled with gratitude as she said, "Lyra, thank you. It's because of you that we all have a brand new home." I smiled. Looking back, that former capital, those painful pasts, seemed as distant as a blurry dream. I was no longer anyone's daughter, no one's subject. I was just me, Lyra, the queen of Ningyuan City. My path stretched out before me, reaching for the stars and the sea. As for that worthless father, dying in the imperial prison, full of regret and misery, who even remembers him anymore? The end.